More news now, and the manager of rock star Pete Doherty appeared in court in Bury St Edmunds today, charged over a hit-and-run crash in which a man was critically injured. Andrew Boyd is accused of offences including attempting to pervert the course of justice following the crash at Hadley in September. Magistrates bailed Boyd until December the 3rd. 42-year-old Chris Corder is still in a coma at the Royal London Hospital.
Now, it cost up to £150 million, but campaigners for one of the region's busiest roads to be entirely dual carriageway say it would bring huge economic benefits.
Today, a public inquiry started into plans to build a new 9-mile stretch of road along the A11. If it gets the go-ahead, work could begin next year. Malcolm Robertson reports.
This is why so many people are in favour of dualling the A11. Motorists who use it regularly will tell you this morning's traffic congestion was typical. The 9 miles of single carriageway were today under scrutiny as a public inquiry began in the village of Elvedon to consider the merits of an upgrade costing up to £150 million.
It must be carried out because the effects of congestion and delays to traffic and the economic effects on the area are significant.
This is how the road would look to those coming from the west of the region. From Barton Mills there would be a series of underpasses, the village of Elvedon would be bypassed, and you'd join up with the existing dual carriageway at Thetford. For almost 40 years they've talked about the complete dualling of the A11. This particular stretch is the only one that remains as a single carriageway, and it carries about 25,000 vehicles a day. But at long last, it does seem as if the end is in sight. Not a day too soon as far as the Norfolk haulage firm Folgers are concerned. Paul Green drives more than 100,000 miles a year and is on the A11 2 or 3 times a week.
Just so frustrating. You travel all over the country and you get held up, but when you want to get home, you know you're this far and then you're going to sit nose to tail.
Opponents of the scheme don't like the idea of ripping up parts of Breckland. Peter Sturgeon's one of the objectors. He believes there's a better alternative at the Barton Mills end.
It's just the dual carriageway's in the wrong place. It needs to be moved further south. No objection at all. The construction's perfectly all right, it's just in the wrong place.
Would completely dualling the A11 bring about that pot of gold from economic prosperity, or would it be an expensive waste of time? A decision's expected in April. Malcolm Robertson, Anglia News.
The lengths Malcolm will go to find a rainbow. Now, the road safety message is being reinforced at Colchester Garrison. Emergency services from across Essex gathered last night at a simulation of a 2-car accident. It's all part of Defence Road Safety Week there. Organisers say troops are particularly vulnerable because many of them are young men.
During their limited spare time off, they do like to get away from the barracks, and being in the forces, they are away from their families and friends back at home quite a lot. So what we're aiming to do here is to reduce any casualties that may happen away from the home base.
Boat owners on the Norfolk and Suffolk Broads are complaining that new toll charges for next year are too high.
The Broads Authority is planning to put the rate up by 6% and says the increases are needed to fund its high level of service. Jim Rice has more.
It's a peaceful pursuit at the best of times, but things are a little choppier than usual on the Broads over the price boat owners pay to use these ancient waterways. The Broads Authorities announced a 6% rise in tolls for all boats in 2010. The second such rise in a row, and that's landed them in hot water with the Norfolk and Suffolk Boating Association, the organisation which represents private boat owners on the Broads.
The tolls have gone up over a 10-year period by about 122%. We think that is a heck of a lot. And we think if they keep putting it up ahead of inflation, then they really will end up killing the goose that laid the golden egg.
A 6% rise in anything sounds like a lot in these times of recession. So is the Broads Authority sailing into dangerous waters. Its chief executive says not.
The charges on the Broads are still very good value, and the survey that we carried out of toll payers, all toll payers this year, showed that they thought it was good value. A 6% increase sounds a lot, but if you have a dinghy on the Broads, it will mean an extra £2.62 a year.
The extra income will be used on dredging and improving water quality, the two main complaints of boat users in a recent survey. The authority says it's aiming for inflation-only increases from 2013. And, of course, for some, there'll still be no charge at all. Jim Rice, Anglia News.
The Suffolk police officer whose investigation led to the conviction of Steve Wright has been honoured at Buckingham Palace today. Detective Chief Superintendent Stuart Gull led the inquiry into the murder of 5 women in Ipswich in 2006. Today he received the Queen's Police Medal.
Well, football now, and after drawing their last 2 matches, a win for Colchester United tonight could put the U's into League One's automatic promotion places. AD Boothroyd's men play the second of 5 games in 14 days when they take on Stockport tonight. And the Colchester boss knows the table could look very different in a fortnight's time.
It gives you the opportunity to get some points on the board and to rack them up, and it's tight at the moment. So this little spell of 5 in 14 might either create a gap where you can get away from teams, or if you're not at it, you could be kind of looking up at teams saying, you know, we could have done better and should have done.
And Norwich just 1 point behind the U's, are also at home. Brighton the opposition for them. Southend have a trip to Tranmere, who are currently bottom of the table.
Now, deer have been roaming one of the ancient forests in our region for centuries, and every year a special census is carried out to manage their numbers.
Now, where do I get this line? From poo samples to thermal imaging cameras, it's a case of mixing traditional methods, literally, with the most modern devices to ensure the animals are counted correctly.
Yes, do hope you're not having your dinner right now. The census is currently underway at Hatfield Forest near Bishop Stortford, from where Martin Stew reports.
Trying to find a deer in a forest the size of 1,000 football pitches is a bit like looking for a needle in a haystack. Luckily, I've got some expert help.
We're going deer hunting, are we?
Henry Bexley and Linda Bouchier are counting the deer at Hatfield Forest as there are fears the numbers are becoming unmanageable. But first, they've got to find them.
So we've got a really nice track mark here through the forest, and we've even got some fresh slot marks here in the mud. You can see the footprints of the fallow deer. We've got the larger ones here, probably from the mother deer, also followed by the smaller ones of the young deer behind there.
Everywhere we look, there are other clues.
This is a muntjac crossing here. You can see where it's been through the hole there in the bramble. The muntjac will go quite easily through the bramble, being only the size of a large dog.
And there are less pleasant clues too. Each dropping of evidence is carefully logged and carefully destroyed. Finally, Henry spots a sign of life. Almost completely camouflaged, it's a fallow deer. They've been native to Britain since the Ice Age. They were introduced to Hatfield Forest by Henry I in the 12th century. Muntjac, a smaller Asian deer, started breeding in Hatfield Forest after some escaped from Woburn Abbey in the 1940s. They now virtually outnumber fallow deer, and if they aren't culled, they could strip the forest bare. Henry showed me the damage they can cause if their numbers aren't controlled.
We've got ring barking going on, where the deer have stripped the bark off of this stem here, which will effectively kill it. And also we've got browsing of the new buds and shoots here.
If the deer population isn't controlled, what will the future of the forest be?
The future of the forest would be extremely bleak in that situation. All the regeneration is severely affected and hampered by the level of deer browsing that we've been seeing over the last 10 or so years.
Rangers admit that while some will have to be culled, they hope to keep their numbers sustainable and their presence a healthy sign of a healthy forest.
Well, let's head back to Martin Stew, who's in Hatfield Forest now, complete with the clean boots, I hope. Martin, what's going to happen with the deer then? Will a cull be necessary? And if it is necessary, is that the most humane way of doing it?
Well, yeah, Jonathan, it's all about sustainability. That's the key word. And I'm joined now, I'm pleased to say, by Henry Bexley, who you saw in the report. He's the head warden here. Henry, is culling really the most humane thing? Is there not some other way we can treat the deer?
Well, these are wild animals, so they've never been handled before, unlike, you know, your livestock that you can easily corral. So shooting with a rifle is really the only practical method where you can cull wild deer.
And what will happen to the deer once they've been culled?
Well, the byproduct of the deer cull is the venison, so it goes into the human food chain, and we do market our venison. It's never the main reason why we cull deer. Obviously that is the woodland management, but nothing goes to waste, so we market our venison from the forest.
Henry, thanks very much. But of course, with culling involved, it's very important that they get the statistics as right as possible. That's why you saw them doing the tracking there with the deer dropping, all the other tracking, and using ivy. But they're also using high-tech equipment. Take a look at this. This here is a thermal imaging camera. It's top technology. And if you take a look at these pictures now, these were filmed about half an hour ago of some of the deer which are are fallow deer. Now, the fallow deer, there's about 2,200 of these deer, they reckon, at the moment, and in a perfect sense, there should be more like 1,500, so some of them will have to be culled. Now, they're going to be counting tonight using that thermal imaging camera which keeps the heat. They're going to be counting tonight, they're going to be counting tomorrow night in the freezing cold and rain for 3 hours each night. Now, I'm going to try a little bit of technology here, so when I click my fingers, we're going to see if we can use a thermal imaging camera right now. So here we go. And I hope, there we go, that we're on thermal imaging camera. And what do you think about that technology, Jonathan and Sasha?
Genius.
Fantastic, and glad to see his jacket's clearly warming.
Yeah,
keeping him warm.
exactly. I think they're going to be part of the census, those two, aren't they?